Hello. The Kelly and Victoria Fairy Stories, Volume 3. The Cricket Match. If you should happen one day to go into a garden and look behind a hedge and spy under a bush next door to a daisy, and if you looked hard and were good and always brushed your teeth, then you might, just might, catch glimpse of a house. Victoria Fairy's house. It was a bright summer's day in Little Wedgwood. Not that Victoria Fairy knew what the weather was like, because she was working in her dark room, blowing up pictures of Kelly and Polo. That is to say, she was making them large, not blowing them to pieces, you understand. She wasn't that happy with the pictures, though, as Kelly always seemed to be looking the wrong way, or had a sad expression on his face, or he'd posed for it and made it look silly, or something like that, and it spoiled the picture.
I'll have to take some more when he's not expecting it,
she thought. At that moment, the phone rang. "Hello, it's Kelly on the phone," said a chirpy voice.
"Hello, Kelly."
"When are you coming round?" asked the unicorn.
"Well, I'm a bit busy at..."
"Come round now," he said, and he was gone. Victoria Fairy sighed as she put the phone down.
"That Kelly,"
she said, but she couldn't help but smile. Finishing what she was doing, she locked the house and, pulling on her summer coat, set off for Kelly Manor. As an afterthought, she slipped her camera in her pocket, just in case. She had got as far as the canal when she met Mousie. He was carrying a large bag.
"Morning, Victoria Fairy,"
he said cheerily.
"You off to the manor?"
"Yes, Kelly rang,"
said Victoria Fairy.
"Well, you'll not find him at home. He's in town with everyone else,"
said Mousie.
"You'd best come with me."
So Victoria Fairy followed after Mousie, slightly puzzled by what was going on. As they got to the village green, everything was made clear. Half of Wedgwood town seemed to be there, all in white trousers and jumpers and caps, which seemed to have 2 different coats of arms on them. "There you are!" cried Kelly as he saw Victoria Fairy. "Where have you been? And why aren't you in your flannels?" Victoria Fairy had no time to protest that she didn't know anything about it, because Kelly rushed off to talk to someone else. Polo came over to Victoria Fairy, though, and explained it all.
"It's the annual cricket match between Kelly's team and Percival's team. It's very hotly contested, and Kelly was 1 short, so he rang you. I suppose he didn't bother to mention the match, did he?"
"No,
said Victoria Fairy a bit crossly.
he didn't."
"Oh, well," said Polo. "I'm sure you'll have a nice time."
"But I don't know anything about cricket,"
said Victoria Fairy anxiously.
"Nor do any of this lot,"
said Polo, shaking his head as he looked at the crowd of players dressed smartly, all excitedly chatting to one another. Kelly and Percival had a brief chat and then flipped a coin in the air, Then Kelly ran over to Victoria Fairy.
Right, we're batting first, so get some pads on and this hat,
said Kelly.
You should really be in whites, but we haven't got any spare.
Kelly,
said Victoria Fairy, but he had already gone off again. She looked at the cap in her hand. It was purple, with a gold K embroidered on it, and her name stitched underneath.
That was fast work,
she said to herself.
I thought you'd probably be playing,
said Polo.
So I did you a cap just in case.
And before Victoria Fairy could say anything, he had tied some big pads on her legs. Suddenly, half the crowd set off onto the pitch to field, while the others sat down on deck chairs by a little pavilion.
Come on then,
said Kelly to Victoria Fairy.
Don't stand about. You're opening the batting.
And he gave her a big bat she could barely lift.
But I don't know how to bat, Kelly,
she said, finally getting to finish a sentence.
I just hit the ball with it,
he said. So Victoria Fairy found herself standing in front of the stumps. 3 sticks with 2 little bales on top, with her bat, feeling a bit silly as she hadn't a clue what to do with it. Kennedy, the mayor, was the umpire, and with a cough, to get the players' attention, he said,
All right, everyone, play.
Ready, dear lady?
called Havers, who was standing, according to Kelly, at first slip.
I think so,
she said.
That's the stuff.
Said Havers.
Tally ho, Percival.
The next thing she knew, a hard red ball flew past her. Kelly shouted,
Hit the ball, you sherbet!
But Victoria Fairy thought this might be quite difficult, as she'd barely seen it. Percival ran up again, and this time Victoria Fairy hid behind her bat, as she didn't like the look of the hard ball. It hit her bat and flew off, making the bat shake and her teeth rattle.
Run now!
cried Kelly, and Victoria Fairy ran.
No, this way!
cried Kelly, and she turned round and ran the other way.
Bravo, Victoria Fairy.
Said Havers.
Lovely strike.
What do I do now?
Asked Victoria Fairy to Kennedy. You just wait there now. It's Kelly's turn, he said with a smile. For half an hour she sat and watched as Kelly batted, swinging his bat all over the place. Sometimes he would hit the ball, sometimes not. It didn't seem to matter, and even when the ball hit the stumps, Havers just put them back together again as if nothing had happened. Kelly scored 98 runs, according to Kennedy, but then he got tired and fell asleep with his leg in the air. Everyone went quiet as Polo carefully carried the little unicorn off the field of play, and Kennedy marked the scorecard, Kelly, 98, retired asleep. Stan then came into bat, and suddenly everyone came back to life, and Victoria Fairy found she had to run up and down and even hide behind her bat again when the ball came at her. Every time she hit the ball, Havers said,
Nice shot, Victoria Fairy.
or,
Cracking stroke, dear lady.
which was very encouraging. All her team sitting in the deck chairs clapped, as did Kelly, who had woken up. He didn't seem to mind being given out of sleep. One after the other, Victoria Fairy's team got out. Havers caught out Stan, which meant Mousy had to bat, and he was bowled when the ball went over his head. Mr. Norman was caught by Percival, which was very clever, as he had fallen over after having a glass of Pimm's out in the deep, which is a fielding position, by the way. Percival's bowling got slower, but the ball seemed to spin so much that Lawrence was bowled out by a googly, which Victoria Fairy thought sounded very silly. Finally, Victoria Fairy got caught out by a little bear called Arthur, who was wicket-keeper for Percival's team, and everyone clapped. Victoria Fairy had scored 24 runs, and she was very pleased with herself. Kennedy said, "Lunch, everyone," and everyone cheered.
Hey! 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 Hey!
They had a lovely lunch of sandwiches and pies and jelly and ice cream and veggie sausage rolls, and they chatted about the game. Everyone was impressed with Victoria Fairy's batting. Engelbert Humperdinck, the mammoth, said,
She cemented the innings.
which sounded very nice. When they were all full, it was Victoria Fairy's turn to field. Victoria Fairy thought she would take her camera with her, as the fielding team seemed to stand about a lot, she thought. Everyone seemed more serious for some reason now Percival's team was batting, but she couldn't understand why.
Is everyone all right?
She asked Polo.
Yes, it's just that, well...
He seemed reluctant to speak. It was soon clear why. Percival and Havers walked over with their bats and their pads on ready to bat. Kennedy said, "Ready, everyone. Play." And Kelly ran in to bowl. Percival hit the ball and it flew into the air. There were shouts of
Catch! Catch!
"Catch!" And Kelly ran under the ball as it fell back down to the ground. Poor Kelly. It looked like an easy catch, but because of his hooves, the ball bounced off them and onto the ground. The little unicorn was very upset.
That's what always happens,
Said Polo.
He tries very hard, but with his hooves, he just can't catch it.
All the team looked sad, but not as sad as Kelly, who looked as upset as Victoria Fairy had ever seen him, and he covered his eyes so no one would see his tears. Again and again it happened. Even Percival's team was sad for Kelly. Kelly managed to bowl them out, but he couldn't catch the ball, however hard he tried. Soon Percival's team had got almost as many runs as Kelly's team, and would win if they scored 3 more. But only Havers and Engelbert Humperdinck were left batting. Everyone else was out. The excitement was intense, but Kelly was too tired to do any more bowling, so he gave the ball to Victoria Fairy.
But I don't know how to bowl.
She said,
Just do what I did,
said Kelly. So Victoria Fairy nervously took the ball and walked over to the spot to begin her run-up. Havers got ready to hit the ball, and Victoria Fairy began to run. As she got to Kennedy, she swung her arm round, and off went the ball. Havers hit it and set off for a run. Polo stopped the ball and gave it back to Victoria Fairy. Percival's team needed just 2 more runs to win. Victoria Fairy went back to her spot, and Engelbert Humbertrunk got ready for his turn. Victoria Fairy began to run, and again, as she got to Kennedy, she windmilled her arm round and bowled the ball. Engelbert swung his bat, and the ball went straight up in the air. Higher and higher, then slowly it began to come down, getting faster as it fell. Everyone yelled, "Catch it! Catch it!" But then they all fell silent, for the ball was right over Kelly. The poor unicorn held out his little hooves to take the ball, but already some of the team looked away, not able to watch. Quick as a flash, Victoria Fairy pulled out her wand and aimed it at Kelly's hooves, tucking it back in her pocket just as fast. As she did so, she felt something in her pocket and brought it out ready. The ball seemed to take forever, and the little unicorn had to wait for what seemed like a year before the ball arrived. Kelly felt it hit his hooves and was expecting to have to run after it on the ground, but Kennedy said,
"Halt! Kelly's team win by 1. Tea, everyone!"
For there, in his hooves, was the ball. It had stuck to them and not bounced out. Kelly couldn't believe it. Everyone cheered and clapped. Even Havers and Engelbert shouted,
Bravo!
And
Well held, sir.
before he knew it, Kelly was held up on his teammates' shoulders, and everyone danced and cheered some more. Kelly, still holding the ball, not believing it.
"That's the first time we've beaten Percival's team,"
said Polo.
"Kelly always bats and bowls well, but we never seem to be able to get them out."
Well, maybe it's time Kelly won then,
said Victoria Fairy.
"I don't suppose you had anything to do with that last catch by any chance?"
asked Polo.
No,
said Victoria Fairy innocently.
but I think Kelly might find it a little bit easier to catch now than he did before, as it did seem unfair.
"Yes, it did,"
said Polo, and he gave Victoria Fairy a little kiss on the cheek.
What was that for?
She asked,
"Being nice."
and he gave her a wink and set off for the little pavilion. They had a wonderful tea with scones and cream, and everyone talked about Kelly's catch. The little unicorn was so pleased he couldn't say a word, and he still couldn't say anything when Percival handed him the cup.
I believe this belongs to you.
He said,
Well played, dear chap. We'll try and get it back next year.
Kelly looked at the trophy with wide eyes.
Are you all right, Kelly?
Asked Victoria Fairy.
But the little unicorn just nodded his head
And smiled the biggest smile of all. Later that night, Victoria Fairy developed the best pictures she had ever taken. One of Kelly catching the ball, one of him looking at the ball in amazement, one of him being held up by the team, and best of all, his tearful smile with the cricket trophy. As she got ready for bed, the phone rang.
Hello, it's Kelly on the phone,
Said the familiar voice.
Hello, Kelly.
Said Victoria Fairy.
Did you see me catch it? Did you? Did you see me?
Yes, Kelly.
Said Victoria Fairy.
I did.
It's time to go to bed, tucked in, no nightmares.
And he was gone.
Yes, it is.
She said, and that's what she did. Goodbye.